Okay, this is your property online, right? It's basically responsible for one thing, generating leads. Now, how you generate leads, there's all kind of variations to that. There's all kind of strategies you can use. But your website's main goal is to generate leads. Now, how does it generate leads? Well, number one, it gets traffic, and number two, that traffic converts. Right? So that's the only two things you're working with online. You're working with traffic and you're working with conversion. Right? Traffic and conversion, that's it. So any website needs to be set up properly with those two concepts at the top of the pyramid, meaning traffic, conversion. So how do you get traffic? Well, if you are one martial arts school in a town of, say, 40,000, and there's no other martial arts schools, well, guess what? You don't need any fancy search engine optimization or anything like that, because you're the only game in town. So if someone is actually looking for martial arts or karate in your town or your area, well, guess what? It doesn't matter how horrible your website is made from a search engine standpoint, your website will be shown, because let's just say use Google. Google has almost 70% of the search market. Google has to show something. So part of your traffic can come through what we call organic search. Someone has the epiphany and they're looking for martial arts, they heard it's a good thing, so they research it, all right? They end up looking for information, and obviously that happens a lot. I mean, just think of the billions that Google makes on search marketing. All right, so that's there no matter what. Now, what changes your game plan, what changes your demand for what you need to do with search engine marketing is all based on your competition. Because like I said, if you're that one school in that town of 30, 40,000 people, well, you really don't need to do much from a search engine standpoint. Even if there's 10 schools, I mean, on a desktop search, when I search on my laptop, I mean, you end up with what? You end up with the screen here, and it's a horrible drawing, and then you have the ads, and then you have a bunch of organic listing, you know, some dots on the map, and then you have some ads here, right? On a mobile phone, right, you end up with ads, and then some map listings, some organic listings. So again, it's all based on your competition. How much competition do you have determines your demand or need for search engine optimization. And a lot of times, you know, in the martial arts world, you know, there's a school out there who's probably paying too much for online marketing because they just don't need it. All right, they don't need fancy search engine optimization. So now you get into the next step of your website. The next step of your website is the conversion side. So let's assume we're getting traffic. What happens to that traffic? Well, is the website set up properly? You got to take an inventory of your marketing text, your words, your visuals, your layout. One important thing, what's called responsive design. I mean, is your site set up so it looks good on all screens? All right, does it respond to each screen? Does it look good on a tablet? Does it look good on a smartphone? Does it look good on a laptop? If it doesn't, you're going to hurt your conversion, all right? So you really need to think about the wording, the visuals, the look, the feel, the flow of the entire package if you're going to help yourself when it comes to conversion, all right? So you have traffic, conversion. Search engine optimization, what we call organic traffic, is a function of your competition. And if you're, now let's just use the opposite example. Let's say you're in a fiercely competitive area. You know, there's 20, 30 schools. There's, you know, 100, 2,000, 100,000 people right in the area. Well, you know, then you get into, if your website is not set up properly, things aren't done right, well, guess what? You're not going to show up, you know, on that, or what we call that organic search. There are things you need to do when it comes to what we call local search and organic search, but it depends on your competition. At the end of this video, I'll give you a chance, we'll take a look at your website and determine where you actually fall. Because like I said, there's not a ton of competition there, then you really don't need elaborate search engine optimization. You really just don't. All right, so let's say everything's looking good, right? You got your traffic coming and you're converting the traffic. How do you know this? Well, it's something called analytics. You track everything, all right? Not just, hey, how did you hear about us? Oh, I went to your website. That's fine, but you should be able to look at raw, you know, data, numbers, that tell you the amount of traffic that's coming to your website, and then you can see the conversion. You can set all this up. All right, now you've heard this before. You have to follow up. So if your website converts and someone says, all right, I want to try out your program, whether they're buying a package for 20 bucks or whatever, or they're doing some free introductory lessons. Well, you have to actually convert that traffic and you have to bring it in, and that's going to take some follow-up. All right, so right away, when someone takes you up on your trial offer, you need to follow up with them, right? So you either need some confirmation emails, and in some cases you need to make a phone call to bring them in and try it out, and you need to confirm that. So you have to actually get the web lead in the door. All right, so that's where you really need what we're going to focus on now, which is the follow-up side of things. All right, what kind of follow-up do you have going on, for the leads that you're generating? All right, what sort of follow-up? Now, follow-up can be automated, and follow-up can be what we call active. Right? By active is that we can set up email marketing two ways. We can have autoresponders, systems in place, sequences, or we can go into our list and we can broadcast an email out. All right. So now you've heard it said it takes 2 to 7 contacts. All right. Now, where does the follow-up? What is it all about? Well, it comes down to what we call content and delivery. So in order to follow up with somebody, you need content. Right? If I'm going to call you up and I'm going to say, hey, Bill or Sally, I see you are interested in lessons. Well, that's content, meaning I'm calling you and I'm saying something. I can't call you up and say nothing, right? So a lot of times people struggle, school owners struggle, because they want to follow up and they want all these automated systems, but they don't know what to say. They don't know what to say at week 2, email 3 to follow up properly. So that's the content side. That content needs to be created, because you got a content responsibility, you have a delivery. Content and delivery. All right, does that make sense? Content, delivery. So when you build the follow-up system, even if it's just email marketing and it's automated, meaning I'll follow up on you, for the next 6 months until you reply back and book a lesson. Well, I need the content in there to follow up. All right, so content and delivery. Just like I was going to call you, I need to say something. Same thing when it comes to the email. I need to say something. All right. Now, once you get your content in place and your follow-up systems in place, well, guess what happens? You end up with more students, more referrals, more upgrades, more everything, because of of your system. So, when you break up, you have to break up your follow-up systems. All right, this is one of the things we want to talk about. One of the things we want to chat about here. And by the way, this is a totally unscripted video aside from my notes. All right, so you have a couple things here, a few things actually. So the first one is web. Then you have your intro. Then you have your no-show. Then you have your special events. Non-enrolled student. All right, so you have 5 follow-up funnels. All right, so pay attention. First thing you have is your web lead follow-up. Website's looking good, it's getting traffic. Someone says, all right, I'm coming in. And they give you their name, their email, their phone number, whatever else you ask for. Well, we need to have follow-up in place that brings them in. Now, if I get 10 people opting into my website for my free offer, not all 10 are going to show up next week. That's just not reality. So I need to stay in contact with these folks via phone calls and via email messages to stay on what we call the top of their mind. All right? Otherwise, they're just going to forget about us. So my web leads get follow-up. Now, some of these web leads end up as intros. Right? So now confirmation email has to go out. Once someone from a web lead becomes an intro, it's another step. I can collect more information from them and I can confirm their introductory lesson. And now, if they come in, they sign up, they become a student. If they don't show, they end up as a no-show. And if they don't enroll, they end up as a non-enrolled. Okay? So now the intro lesson can go 3 ways. They can become a student and get into that world. Okay, now they're yours. All right, they're either going to stay training or you got some upgrade program for them, or they're going to end up in my world where, you know, how we build systems for schools, and they're a no-show, so we got to go back and follow up with them as a no-show and get them in, or they come in and for some reason they don't enroll, so they end up in a non-enrolled sequence. So just from the one lead, you ended up with 3 possible scenarios. 2 of them are possible scenarios where they don't actually become a student. That's very real. That happens. All right? And it's normal, right? Because not everybody's ready to start. Not everybody shows up either, all right, when you book a lesson. Okay, so these all have their own systems here, non-enrolled, and no-show. Now the other system in place when you're generating leads for your school and you're hustling, we talked about it at the beginning of the video, special events. People come to birthday parties, they come to, you know, parent night out, they come to self-defense classes, they come, whatever they come to. What sort of system do you have to, at the very least, get them into a database and say, hey, thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being my guest. I mean, that's the very minimum you have to have. So your other demand for a follow-up becomes these special events, all right? So you have your 5 follow-up systems. You have your web leads, you have your intros, you have your no-show, your non-enrolled, and your special events. These are 5 follow-up systems you need to put in place, like right away. All right, right away. Okay, because if you don't, you're just letting people slip through the cracks. Okay, so now let's get into other forms of active marketing. All right. Now, one of the linchpins of online marketing that is still very productive, although some people say it isn't, is your email marketing. Now, I won't go into how this is done, but there's an art and a science to it. Some of it, frankly, some people suck at it, and they wonder why it doesn't work, and it doesn't work because they suck at it. And some people are good at it, and it works for them, right? So you really got to get to the point where you're good at it, and that probably involves getting some help and just getting better and being open-minded to learning how this is done. But we're not going to get into that. But you have 2 kinds of email marketing. You have your passive, and you have your active. Now, passive is everything we just talked about. Passive is when you have an automatic, what we call relevant system. Okay, so I come in, I don't enroll in your school, and for the next 6 weeks, I have something to get me back over the hump. I book an intro lesson, I don't show up for that intro lesson, I have something to get me over the hump. Okay, I have a follow-up system relevant to the fact that I didn't show. I come to the website and I download information for a free trial program or whatever, and I don't, you know, I don't come in, I don't contact you. Well, I have to have something in place that assumes I haven't booked that intro yet. Because the minute someone comes in from the web trial and I call them and I book an intro with them, now what I do is I take that same lead and I move them into an intro, and then they become removed from the web lead follow-up. Does that make sense? So let's say I'm a web lead, I want your trial offer, whether it's paid or not, and then I book my intro lesson. Now I'm treated as an intro lesson, and all the other stuff stops. So I'm no longer going to get emails that remind me that I booked this trial. I get emails relevant to the fact that I booked a trial or an intro. Does that make sense? All right. So now you have your passive and active. So this involves building a list, which is key. So your list. So you're building a list in all these areas, from the web leads, you know, special events, you know, and all this stuff that you do, you know, and all your intro lessons. So someone comes in and they build, you know, they walk in the door and they book a lesson. Well, they're a lead now, and they go on this email list. And this email list should be worked at least once a week, twice a month at the very least. Now, you can work that with what's called active email.
So yes, if I'm a web lead, I get the passive emails.